ISC2 general meeting for June. My name is Frank Simmer-Jay. I am the chapter's president. See if these slides go forward. I am the chapter's president, and along with myself and the 7 of us, we welcome you to this meeting. We formed this organization, interestingly enough, during the pandemic, which is a challenge in its own. However, at this point, you represent one of 200 plus strong of this association. So Northwest definitely has a need, and I'm pleased to see that we're able to move forward. So for myself, Jean, Trey, Mark, Stephen, Jake, and Joe, if you guys are all online, thank you very much for participating. As you know, up until now, we have not taken chapter level dues, and I don't see us doing that anytime soon, but we are very grateful to Caliber Security, who has stepped up as our feature sponsor, IO Active, who is now a sponsor, and in fact, we have a couple of others that we'll be announcing shortly, so really happy about this involvement. If you work for an organization and you see value in our chapter, as I said, right now it's difficult. In the future, it'll be easier. And we do represent, the cornerstone of what is the gold standard for information security. I welcome your organization to work with the leadership and become a sponsor of this chapter. The entry is extremely inexpensive, and we did that on purpose. We're looking at a $500 entry to become a sponsor of our organization, and really want to emphasize the fact that we are here for the Northwest to promote good cyber and good cybersecurity and security knowledge. So to that, our mission and our charter is really to build the core essence of a strong organization. In prior meetings, I have brought up this slide, and I plan to in every session, because I want to make sure that for our board and for our members, everybody's aware of what we're here to do. We are here to elevate and expose the organization as an educational institution. Unlike some educational institutions that have an extremely high cost, our intent is to be as inexpensive as possible and to provide that highest value for CISSPs, both members and non-members. If you are an aspiring CISSP, or if you are already a chartered individual within the organization, our intent here is to build the community in the Northwest and build this as probably the strongest organization in cybersecurity. With that, today we have one of my best friends that has presented in the past, Brian Hurd. Him and I have worked together for countless years in different capacities. And, I could go on and on about how much of a pain in the ass he is, or I could talk about his virtues. But you know what? I have to give him credit. He ran some amazing programs, and he even stepped into Microsoft, which is, talking about the minute you step into Microsoft, it's, somebody smells blood, somebody's chewing at your tail pretty quickly. He took on a very important role, and he managed our incident process and our IR for global issues for the company. Now he's taken on a much more important role even than Microsoft. And to that said, I want to give him an opportunity to talk about a topic that I think is extremely important, is the response when it comes to breach. So that is where my presentation ends, and I start handing over to Brian. But there's one final thing that I do want to make sure everybody's aware, that when you signed up for this session, unlike other organizations, we are an official chapter, and we can collect and maintain CPEs for you. But you have to provide your number during the registration process. If you fail to do that correctly, you will not see the CPE show up on your accreditation page. So if you did, you will get them. Otherwise, just be aware that you will not. If you do find that you didn't enter the information correctly, please sign out and sign back in really quickly. That's probably the fastest way to do it. If not, just let one of us know, and we'll make sure that you get your during tonight's session. With that said, Brian, I'm going to hand this off to you, and I am going to be quiet for the rest of this hour.
One, I hope not. Two, and if you start listing anything but my virtues between Gene and our shared attorney and others, that would take up the whole hour. And I welcome my friends to jump in, the friends I know already or the friends I don't and will on this group. This is meant to be a practitioner's discussion. So I'm quite happy to kind of do a 10 or 15 minute, State of the Union kind of thing, and then take stage direction from Frank or others. So really honored to be talking to the group. I am I guess you could call it a lifelong CISSP. My cert number is 23,077. Was in the very early heydays of this. The only reason it wasn't 4 digits instead of 5 is because many of you younger kids may not know this. There were about 12 competing certifications, and the CISSP finally played Hungry Hungry Hippos and won out the game. So a lot of us were kind of standing back waiting for the food fight to end, and then we all went and got our CISSP. One thing I'll say is the CISSP continues to be a mark of distinction in the community. There are a lot of follow-on certifications above or below it, but a stalwart of executives and senior technical people alike is that broad brush certification. So I can't speak highly enough about how it's been helpful to me in my career and how I do see it as an important discussion point when talking to candidates or people that want a career in cybersecurity and want to understand how well-rounded you need to be to really get out of a particular silo. And the core body of knowledge continues to evolve over time, and I'm proud to see that. And yes, like all of you, I used to write some of the exam questions. I think some of them are wrong too, and they're still testing a bunch new each time, we know. Frank and I have worked together, as have Jake and others on this call. And I titled this specifically for people who don't do incident response. It's not a day in the life of a cyber smoke jumper. It's days, nights, and weekends. It is your best day is some other CISO's worst day. Your phone rings in the middle of the night. Usually it is an attorney or outside counsel. We'll get into that in a little bit. And they're calling you because something has burned down or is still on fire, or there are people trapped in that house, whatever. And you have to assess the situation, figure out an approach, get paperwork in place, and then deploy a team virtually or often physically around the globe to address what probably is an issue that isn't finished blowing up yet. And then a lot of times months of work to figure out, to find out if you have an active shooter type event, to expel the intruders, start to figure out that you can harden the perimeter or restore business. Then and only then can you start your arson investigation, which may drag on for weeks and months if the logs weren't flattened, if they were retained, if they were granular enough, ... between logs, images, and everything. You will learn every function that could have been turned on and wasn't in every tool you never wanted to install. The average number of tools in a Fortune 50 CISO's quiver is somewhere between 100 and 200. Different devices, security, all over the network. Most of it's not centralized, even if they have Splunk, great company. So I'll back up in terms of my role at Aon, which is an insurance company. They bought a small company called Stroz Friedberg. Many of you may not know that name. A couple of you do, I know. But for those of you who don't, the only thing we suck at is marketing. Everything else we kick ass, but we really have been word of mouth for about 20 years now. You don't know us, but you know our work. Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, we were hired to come in and basically investigate not only Cambridge Analytica, but 8 million other apps at Facebook, working together with FTI, another great company in the group. And I often work with IOActive and other Seattle-based companies in very collaborative ways. So I thank our sponsors as well, whether they're on the call or not. Frank, send me the sponsor information. That's an immediate yes for a $500 sponsorship. Would love to support the chapter. Get me the paperwork, I'll make that happen.
Yeah, he meant 5,000 for you.
Oh, he meant 5,000 for me? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Lawyer.
50,000.
Nice. And if I route it through either of you two, it keeps going up. Thanks, Gene. Heard that. So yeah,
The better I know you, the more expensive it is.
exactly. It's the family rate. He doesn't like his family.
It's the inverse family rate.
So the group we have we do a bunch of stuff. We do 50 things, but we have the Xerox problem. Everybody only knows us as the cyber smoke jumpers. And I'm not helping with my title. But we do like 50 things for CISOs. We do all the assessments, all the pen testing. We've got a whole group of hackers of ethical hackers around the world. We do all the cyber insurance litigation, all that kind of stuff. The other cases we've worked are Mark Zuckerberg hired us when his college roommate tried to fake a Word document and claim half the company. If you ever want to see one of the world's best examples of a computer forensics document, Google the following: Uber, Google, and Exhibit 22 and autonomous vehicles. It is a Strauss-Friedberg report which was compromised and put in the public sector, not by our public space, not by us, but it is the Lewandowski case of stealing intellectual property theft from his transition from Google to Uber. My favorite quote in the report: "Hey, make sure to delete your text on your phone each night so Strauss-Friedberg doesn't get them." It's just so awesome to have your advertisement by your adversary trying to do counter forensics, and it's in the forensics report. My other favorite finding in there is when one of the individuals reformatted his hard drive while sitting in our lobby when the court had ordered him to turn over the laptop. So the date timestamp of the reformat was literally while he was stalling in our own lobby. The court did not take kindly to that either. So those are the kind of things. It's not just all about running into a smoking crater. There's a lot of protracted multi-year, sometimes multi-decade litigation, captures of cell phones. And the issue for executives like us is you have to be so well-rounded to lead the team. And I am, and I know I'm going to get agreement on this around the room. It's also your job to be the dumbest person on that team. And I succeed in that every single time. You bring smarter people to the client. While you can run an orchestra, you probably can't play those instruments very well. And that's not your job. So as you grow into this field and you evolve into your career, remember at a certain point, it's your job not to be the smartest person. It's your job to hire the smartest people, to leverage them, to outsource to them, to do whatever it is for the mission, whether that mission's government or commercial. The other couple things I'll say is ransomware is rampant. It is just slamming everybody. The ransoms are going up. They're not being nice. They're still hitting hospitals. They're not going out of business. They're just changing their name. I don't care what article you read about how nice, good, or retiring Russian cyber criminals are in this. That's not happening. It's all BS. They just don't want to get Tomahawk missiles put on them after accidentally flattening the national gas industry, which I hope we do. I've talked to a couple senators about that over the years. We need to bring reason to that. If you are going to go talk to, or you are, an executive in that field, we know you've been doing it for 20 years. We know you've been doing it well, but we all need to step up our game. But remember, every executive you go to as a consultant, they know their job, but they might need to hire you from some smart side, some expansion of their team to do the things they can't do, or to do the dumb stuff they don't want to do so they can up-level their team. Be willing to talk to that executive and play either role. Sometimes we're the thought leader. Sometimes we're the person with the big shovel following the elephant. It works out both ways, and it's how you're a continuing partner. The other thing I'll say about this job is you often will care too much about your clients in crisis, and then you will go fight another fire tomorrow. Understand that emotional toll of going into a case and becoming part of that company. Remember, they're not mortal. I've been in more boardrooms in the past 3 years than in the rest of my career, but my time there is limited and my role there is distinct. I don't think they're going to put my name on a chair anytime soon. And I got to be careful what I say to who, not only for the lawyers' issues, but just general decorum of an executive visiting a boardroom that has made a multi-billion-dollar company before I got there, and will make probably another couple $1 billion in worth after I leave because of whatever this little fire was. So there's a great, as much as my friends will tell you on this call, I don't show it often. There is a great humility to this job. It's just they don't get to see this. Most of the times I have to be humble. They only get to see times like this. What else? If you think it's a really cool job flying around the world, on an expense account, fighting fires and being James Bond, it's a trap. It's the inside of a Marriott and too many frequent flyer miles and too much airline food. So again, be careful what you wish for. We're hiring, but I warn you, it's not an easy life and it's not an easy job. A lot of expectations of people who are in distress. When Frank and I were talking about this, he wanted me to talk, as I have a little bit, about how my certification has played a role in my career, not only technically giving me the understanding enough of a waterfront, of cryptography, of internal security, of physical security to be able to play this role. It's also given me a network which has paid back, without exaggeration, thousands of times. When I don't know or my team doesn't have an answer, I can pick up a proverbial phone and call Frank and call Jake and call Gene. And after they stop laughing that I have to ask a question, they usually give me the right answer, or at least a lead to a person who might have it.
Yeah, laugh out loud, my friend. Laugh out loud.
Exactly. Develop your network early. It is one of your best assets in your career. You may find somebody you hire. You may find somebody who hires you, or you may use it as your phone a friend when you're on the game show and you only have 30 seconds left to answer that damn question. So don't look at this just as something that's on your business card. Look at it as something that's a part of your journey. And it's as much a part of your journey as you take care of it and become an active member of groups like this and of the community in general. Frank, any other questions? Because I know you were chatting with some of the board members and other things here around either the certification and its role, or the organization, how it plays a role in not only career progression but like day-to-day operations.
I think you hit on the high points. If you want to share and jump into your content, you should have control.
Oh, understood. For everybody in this room who's been poisoned by PowerPoint bullets or riddled with PowerPoint bullets, I'm not going to share any slides tonight. Probably should. It'd be better than my picture up on the screen, but oh well. The other parts of content that I'll talk about is most people don't understand what the first 12 hours of a breach looks like. It looks like Jake talking to a lawyer, getting paperwork, so you can legally actually respond to the fire.
Brian, did you just see what you did to Jake? You totally missed it. Man, let me tell you, that was priceless.
And not kidding, many times I actually am calling Jake or vice versa. So it is not only a literal statement, it is a figurative one as well.
He's not lying.
I spent my first
It's
day
true.
talking to lawyers. So, and Jake, feel free to jump in as we talk about the next couple steps of this. That's why no matter who your clients are, make sure they have all those contracts for an incident response person in place in advance. Don't pick your team on game day. Don't negotiate the price of a gallon of water to put out your house fire while it's on fire. Not a great time.
With the caveat that the courts are seriously screwing around with that concept. You have to be careful if you want to maintain attorney-client privilege. So I think it's an open question as to whether or not you should have a response team on contract or just have one chosen, ready to go.
And that is a great distinction, because there's for those of you in the community, including today's Supreme Court decision, but I don't think we're going to go down that track tonight. Is the Capital One case has broken open a lot of what were the previously self-evident truths of the community. Having an MSA with a vendor in advance is a good idea. Now there's a couple of issues to face. So I'm going to jump from the front of a breach to the back end of the the litigation after the fact to start off as like after you've finished a breach and done a breach report, then the shareholders, stockholders, stakeholders, regulators, everybody then comes in with the litigation around a breach. And your report may play, and also, by the way, the insurance claim. So the questions that come up are, can we have a copy of the report? In many cases, they shared the privileged report, which breaks privilege, or they overshared it. Bad idea. They didn't have a separate and distinct statement of work or an understanding of how the work done before as proactive and during a breach was differentiated. That's poor project management. And it's poor contracting. There's a very technical person that screwed up a client because they don't understand that it's more important. So I always make this observation, and Gene and Jake and Frank have heard it, is all of you are experts in the bottom 7 layers of the OSI model, from the presentation layer all the way. What you don't know is there's layers 8, 9, and 10, which is politics, contracting, and legal. And so there's level 8,
I
9,
know
and
them
10.
well.
Yeah, exactly. You will spend more of your career in levels 8, 9, and 10 because 1 through 7 are logical. Those are easy to solve. The problems in 8, 9, and 10 are not. They will test your soft skills. They will test your journeyman's knowledge of legal and contracting. I have negotiated this week alone 15 different major contracts with Fortune 50 down to Fortune 50,000 companies, like huge to micro. And while I still have to get them approved by my attorneys, a lot of times I'm defending or helping write the language that ends up in the final product. But I always have to have it, officially approved by legal. Those skills came from things like the CISSP and continual learning throughout my career. So Jake's right, and there's another distinction. Many of the firms that do IR only do IR, which means you only usually call them around that. Being proactive and testing and other things like we do, and having IR, there's ways around that contractually. A great discussion topic for when we have a beer, some war stories. So back to the start of this is your attorney, your general counsel will call an outside counsel. Most general counsels kind of don't know that. A lot of CISOs don't even think about it. They think in an emergency, they're large and in charge and running this operation. That is far from the case. Your lawyer's lawyer hires us to come in, and the lawyer's lawyer tells us what to do and you to help us. It's a very interesting dichotomy of a CISO leading a breach while also being led and advised. That's the first couple hours. So after you figure that out and get paper inked, then you got to figure out a team, which means you're doing, during the papering, you're doing a scoping call. What type of environment, where? Can they shut things down? What's their business continuity plan? Did they have one? What's their IR playbook? Did they have one? The answer to those 2 things is no, by the way. They didn't have one, whoever they are. Do they even know what happened? Do their corporate emails work? I've had a client who couldn't call me on a Sunday morning because they were so encrypted with ransomware, they couldn't find my phone number. They had to get out their own personal cell phones and Google to find the phone numbers to get in touch with me because they had no access to corporate email. Then we deployed a team for one client of 30 individuals, setting up a war room in Israel and a war room in California and doing 12 on, 12 off handoffs. We deployed that team of 30 for 3 months. The engagement was $2.1 million in services from us alone. Add on top of that, your lawyer, the ransom you have to pay, the negotiators to pay that ransom, the PR firm you hired to make it all look good, plus notifications and other things. The ultimate bill is, I don't know, somewhere north of $15 million. More, probably much more. I don't know about class action lawsuits in that case. For those of you that remember the Target breach, a little show of hands. Everybody remembers Target breach from 2013?
I cannot forget it.
The court made yet another decision about liability only of what, Jake, 4 weeks ago? So up in,
I think so.
I don't know, Michigan or somewhere. Yeah. So that case, that CISO still testifying. That CISO will live that breach long after they've left that logo. They will be called back as an expert witness. So all of you who want the big chair, again, research what it means and understand what it means when you're negotiating your next job at that level. Because I've had other CISOs who moved on. They're like, I'm being called back in. What's the going rate for expert testimony? And I'm like, so I gave them our rates for expert testimony and prep and some estimates. And they're like, holy crap. I'm like, yeah, you should just do a career expert testimony and it'd be better. Very expensive to do. So that's kind of, the first 12, 13 hours of a breach. A lot of times what I'm doing is landing and talking to the CEO, talking to the general counsel, figuring out if they're willing to pay $5 million or have to pay $5 million or more to get their stuff decrypted. Did their backups work? Were the backups also encrypted? Other times the call is somebody got into our email and we just wired $4 million to a factory we never created, or to a bank we never dealt with. And that money, by the time they figured out, usually it's a little late, even the Secret Service can't pull that cash back. So then they're out, X hundreds of thousands of dollars now trying to figure out if that's the only fraud or how it happened, how it won't happen again. Usually leads back to a business email compromise, most of the time. The straight CFO scams where the Nigerians are doing an email, that doesn't work too often. You'll get some people to buy gift cards and stuff, but the real big ones go that way. Other types of breaches, bad lever. An employee takes the intellectual property with them. That's the Lewandowski case. And somebody posted, by the way, thanks, the link to that product. I know it's a geeky thing to say, but that's a fun forensics report to read. It really kind of is. And that'll tell you, as a CISSP, some of the things as an investigator that your technical skills, who they were talking to, what 3 or 5 channels were they talking on. Final kind of a war story, and then I'm going to bring it back around to some of the leaders to throw some guiding questions or go to Q&A, is I just finished a case where a hacker basically took over the cell phone of a CEO of a company, took over his Gmail account, then reset his Facebook and Instagram passwords, then logged into the corporate G Suite, set up a Slack account, and started basically hacking the company and then harassing the CEO's family via Facebook and Instagram. Now, this was all done because the hacker was told the CEO was a pedophile and was hired for 1,000 British pounds to hack the company by a disgruntled employee. However, one of the shortest and most successful cases I've ever worked in my career, when the hacker was harassing the executives in their own internal Slack channel, he added the ex-employee whose account was still active to the chat so the person could watch the arsonist they hired. So we immediately had the suspect who hired him. He flipped on the guy he hired and had pictures of the house in Britain, and already the British police knocking on the door and talking to mom and dad about what their son's been doing for 1,000 British pounds. In less than about 4 weeks, first phone call to, we're done here. Those are fun cases. Most of them don't go like that. They drag on for weeks and months, and, litigation and other things just drag on for years. So there's a lot of great fun in the cyber smoke jumper community. It's a lot of stress, sometimes yours, sometimes everybody else's. And your job is to walk in and bring calm and bring a plan. And that plan will test and tax the entire core body of knowledge of a CISSP and beyond. I'd love to see more legal and executive components to the CBK as we move forward. I hate when they call it soft skills, because it actually really isn't the soft part of the job. Personally, to me, data visualization and just chewing through logs is the soft part of the job because it's easy. You can do it by yourself. Let's see. The other thing is, for those of you on the call who have aspirations to either go the straight commercial route or government service or anything like that, please let me know. I've been every single flavor of security, from a military uniformed officer to a civilian for the US Navy, to a dirty, rotten integrator contractor in Washington, D.C.'s Beltway, to a government executive, to an exec at Microsoft, and then a wandering Ronin, as I am now with Amazon, with Aon and helping companies around the world. So there's pluses and minuses to each of those jobs. the one thing I'll say is pick one where you love the mission or you love what the company does for the world. That'll help you put up with all the nights, long hours, and weekends. So I'll turn it back over to my gracious hosts and for stage direction, but thanks for taking time out of what I'm sure is I think Frank used to call it at Microsoft, it's a half day. After 12 hours, you've marked a half a day on the time card. You can start thinking about what you want to do with the second half.
Half day, absolutely. I like my half days. So So Brian, I mean, we do have a little bit more time, and it's an opportunity for you to dig in. I know that you had a couple of other topic areas that you wanted to you had explored, that you were discussing to explore. Certainly, one of the next steps, I guess, for everybody that's thinking of the association and becoming a CISSP or has already been there, is what are the you mentioned soft skills. What are the soft skills that people should start thinking about to become more proficient and be able to pass an exam like the CISSP, or can take away and start using as tools in their corporation?
Gotcha. One of the
You muted yourself.
No, I didn't touch it. Somebody else hit the kill switch. Really?
No, I muted you because I meant to mute myself. That was really bad.
Hey, just never give Jake the mute button or you're never gonna hear another damn thing I say tonight. The prep for the test, there's a lot of great practice exams and things like that available for somewhere around, the price has probably gone up, but like somewhere around 100, 150 bucks, you can get a great tome of 1 or 2 books plus 3 or 4 practice exams. The thing I'll tell you about those exams is you have to overread before the exam and relax during it. If you will drive yourself nuts trying to like figure out between 2 questions. If it's that hard, it's probably an example question they're testing. And do your best and then just flag that one as one of the ones you didn't like, and probably other people don't like either. Because on the question, I think it still works like this: 150 questions, of which they grade 125 of them. 25 of them are in testing. They give you 5 or 10 that you could say, look, this question sucked. And then they grade whatever's left. I don't know the exact numbers, and I think some of that's their secret sauce.
Things have changed. I don't know. You definitely are coming from a dinosaur, maybe days of the dinosaur, but now it's a progressive test.
Oh, that's right.
It's computerized.
Not only that, not only is it computerized, but it's progressive. So if there is a topic that you don't get, the questions will progressively continue drilling you into that section.
Agreed. And you're right. I had heard about that. I have not had to take the test in a little while, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, so the strategy for making sure you have the waterfront and making sure that you're doing practice exams, because if you're just kind of daydreaming on those first couple questions, you may find yourself down the rabbit hole on encryption more than you needed to be. So you know, the prep thing for it is, I think the best thing is talking to fellow CISSPs like this, especially those that are involved in writing the test questions, getting a good couple examples, but realizing, yeah, you're going to do it to pass the test, but you want to conversationally, at the same time, above and beyond that, bring that topic back into your day job. What is encryption? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to your company? What does physical security mean to what you recommend for firewall and VPN settings? What about USB drives being dropped in the parking lot? So there's a lot of things to the value of the first value is taking the test and getting your cert. The second value is taking it out for a drive and really progressing your career with that knowledge and that waterfront of knowledge of the CBK. So I think that's the way to view the test for what it is and then what it empowers.
All right, so some folks have started putting some conversation into the chat, but
Sure.
if you have a question, I think it'd be a great opportunity for you to ask at this time. Again, you know, the opportunity here is this was an open forum to have some discussion, especially associated with this space. Interestingly enough, while I speak, Brian, if you can pull up your chat, there.
Yeah, I'm reading Jamal's question right now.
I can't summarize what he said. It'd probably be faster for you to read what he said.
No, so Jamal, great question. So Jamal's asking about attribution, a favorite topic of many in the industry, attributing an attack to Russia, China. And if you find a very, very distinctly advanced adversary, do you always just default to, oh, it's Russia? So a couple things on this. So I'm going to start with the theory of attribution, then I'm going to talk about some fallacies of it. So a couple things. At a certain point, you might not want to seek attribution for the following reasons. If somebody stole your car to claim it to insurance, it doesn't matter to you which gang or organized group or individual stole your car to get covered by insurance. However, if a nation state intelligence agency stole your car, it's probably not covered by insurance. That is a possibility that literally acts of war or acts of nation state espionage may or may not be covered. Talk to your insurance broker and agent. I got a bunch of friends that do it. And by the way, there's another cert I got, was an insurance cert. Why? Because it's a misdemeanor to talk about insurance in Washington State without one. So I don't want to go to jail as part of my job. So I had to go get yet another cert, buy yet another book, and pass yet another test. So attribution, the first question is, what's the value of attribution to the organization? Now, if the value is PR, we got hit by a highly sophisticated actor, you can say that without attributing to a nation state. And I will tell you, the organized crime groups around the world meet or surpass the capabilities of nation states and are not nation states. I work around the world with Interpol and others throughout my career. Hey, Carmen, I see you got your license too. Welcome to the crew. It's not as exciting as everybody else thinks it is, was it, Carmen? The other things about it are, so yeah, why do you need that? What value? The other thing is, after you get your car back or your insurance company pays you, is it a value to your business to keep investigating the case? Or do you just refer information to law enforcement and kiss that goodbye? Because even if they find the individual, and we do, we bring people to justice. And David Dunn, another great friend here in Seattle, former Seattle PD, when we brought Selenev back and extradited him while he was on vacation, all of a sudden, one of the Politico's kids brought him here for Seattle for his trial. But those companies, yeah, they'll give evidence, but it's not going to make the company any money to spend a ton of time having their most senior cybersecurity executives talking about some guy that stole one of their trucks 5 years ago. So yes, you should participate. Yes, we should put these people in jail. Yes, we should put warheads on them if they piss us off enough. But once you are on the commercial side, you kind of have to put your personal desire to bring justice to morons aside, and you have to think about the best outcomes for the company at multiple levels: the legal level, the PR level, what you do for Godmom and Apple Pie, and what's worth the company's time. Secondarily, so now I'll get into the technical parts of attribution. When I did offensive ops, I put Russian code into my stuff, or I used a North Korean time zone just to F with everybody else. So I've done attribution very successfully for 30 years. I've seen it done horribly bad, and I could easily run circles around the people like, oh, we saw this date timestamp and it was a Cyrillic keyboard. Yeah, we did that all the time too, back in 1995. Like, not for the kids a little younger, that was before the web existed. So we were playing those games a long time ago. I wouldn't put too much credibility into some of that. Other times when the groups name themselves, they'll change the names, they'll change the things, and the loose affiliation between organized crime and nation state is a marriage of convenience. They don't have control as much as one would think they do. And then the other final thing about attribution is, if you do want to talk about nation states, here's the quick list. The Chinese will get into your systems and stay there forever, quietly stealing everything. The Russians will get in, steal everything, be loud, and probably throw flares on the way out to burn your house down. The North Koreans want money and missile technology more than anything else. The rest of it, probably just noise or harassment if you make a movie about them. And all the friendlies, France, Israel, and any other logo you might like, are looking for high-end technologies vaccines or other things to save their country billions of dollars, because unlike some countries that separate the intelligence community from national economic power, many countries don't. They just see their CIA, their version of the CIA, as a better way to conduct economic espionage. And then there's all the financial, financial crime groups and stuff like that, like the ransomware vendors. And that is not, by the way, a group. Final bit on this, and then I'll turn it back for the next question is, it is an ecosystem of evil. It is a set of marketplaces where some people deploy phishing, hook, and then sell batches of victims down the line for the intrusion vendors to do their thing. Then they achieve access and sell them down the line for the installation of another group for the ransomware. And then finally, once they're ransomed, there's a whole nother group that does the negotiations and or help desk. And there are help desks. And on the web, you can rent a botnet for weeks at a time for 20 bucks. There's whatever the evil eBay this year is, Silk Road 7, we keep knocking them down, or whatever the others are. There's plenty of places you can buy botnets, humans, or drugs. So you're not going against a hooded kid. I never want to see a hooded kid on a slide ever again. It gives the wrong perception. It's not a person, it's not a group, it's a continent. You are fighting just tsunamis of random evilness, even throughout a single chain of victimization. So like, oh, this hacker did this type of methodology and now the ransomware did this. Those might not even be, those people never meet each other. It's all siloed and it's all marketplace. So you can't really put a lot of credence in attribution along some of the particular paths of exploitation of a client. Final bit on that is they exfiltrate before they ransom you. So even if you get your packets back, they'll extort from you not to publish your data. And what Jake will tell you is whether they publish or not, you're still telling the regulator. So if you can get your stuff back without paying the ransom and decrypt it, and they just threaten to publish it, you might as well take that 5, 10, and by the way, the high water mark, I believe, is 72 million right now for a Fortune 50, $72 million ransom. I've heard there's one above that, but I haven't seen it. So I'm going to stay at 72. I've seen 72. You might want to spend that millions of dollars just dealing with the PR and getting your systems up to snuff. So that's my long-winded version of attribution and a walk around the ransomware world. Let me go back to the questions.
Questions come in, but I'm going to throw one in ahead of that since I am the moderator. Interestingly enough, I'm not too sure if you heard, China is now officially getting into cryptocurrency called the yuan. It's basically a form of yuan. And they're in fact actually giving people roughly the equivalency of like $30 US of cryptocurrency to test out the whole process. And this is going to be actually backed by the People's Bank. So where I'm going with this is that you talked a little bit about, all of this underground. And I've always thought that it's interesting that everybody's leaning on, all the underground is leaning on cryptocurrency as obviously the preferred form of payment. How do you see something like this new Bitcoin that is actually backed by the Chinese government impacting global trade and the global trade in the underground market?
So cryptocurrency is an interesting evolution in our planet. No matter what cryptocurrencies start to go legit, like Bitcoin, I'll make the same joke as Elon Musk, Dogecoin, or any other coin, or real coin for those of you who REEL coin was made by a friend of ours here in Seattle. The adversaries can always pick the slimiest version. And when you're being extorted, it's not like you can pick which method of payment that your vendor of evil will accept. So they will continue to find cryptocurrencies that are, loose or in safe haven countries. However, with lack of regulation around all this, which is why cryptocurrency was created, they'll continue to abuse them, Bitcoin and others, as much as they can. Because you can turn Bitcoin into other things. But when it does touch the financial system, you start to basically be able to follow the money. And I've done that even back in the day, and even more recently when I was in government. At the end of the day, and I've always said this, somebody wants a boat and somebody's going to buy that boat. and you just go find that person and then work the chain backwards. So the money may go into the internet and get all the vendors and blah, blah, blah. Somewhere in the Ukraine, there's a 20-year-old kid with 5 Lamborghinis and no other means of income. Yeah, why don't we just go talk about that? And that's where I talked to Senator Graham and others when they visited the Microsoft Cybercrime Center. And I said, just tax their grain, use the Commerce Department, and just make them give up their little cyber criminals. Because at a certain point, if you deny the Ukraine $100 million or $100 billion in support, they'll turn over the piece of crap little 2 billionaire that's been cyber attacking the United States. Or, as we often do, we identify them, name and shame, and basically put out a DOJ, and Jake can talk to you about the process. We convict them here and then wait for them to take a vacation on an island nation that we either do or don't have a extradition treaty with. So patience is important in justice. We'll wait. Your biometric will come up sooner or later. If you want to visit Disney World, we're finding people's fingerprints that were on IEDs in Iraq when they try and come here and visit Disney World. We're like 20 years later, you don't retire from terrorism. So yeah, welcome to party, pal. So there's, with time and energy, justice will come, but not quick enough. And too many people will make a whole living and die quietly, happy being criminals. I'm hoping we'll see a change in that. And I saw a lot of the chat about when will this end? What are we doing? People, to pay or not to pay. If you have no other way to get kids back, you're going to pay. Period. End of sentence. Don't care if it's an OFAC violation. It's either pay or your children don't exist or your company goes out of business. Okay. It's a horrible place to be in, and it's a place I have walked hundreds of companies through that decision. The ire of the DOJ for an OFAC violation, or the entire company folding and 3,000 employees out of work and no pay. So there's a lot of very hard decisions when you're in that room. It is a pressure cooker, and these executives are facing the worst week of their career, and they look to you and Frank and Jake and Gene and go, what do I do? It's a horrible place to be.
Years on you one more time, and I just the only reason I'm doing this is that Connor actually brought this question up, and in fact, earlier today I had an individual that actually isn't attending tonight. And the questions that I have are very similar, and it'd be fantastic for me to be able to respond to this individual by email saying, watch the session. So it has to do with career progression. Both of them very similar, and let me kind of cover this. And I know this is kind of veering off your topic, and we are getting to the top of the half hour, but just for the mere fact that I had this come in twice in just a couple hours. So the question was about career progressions, particularly your background with Navy. That was the one question that came from Connor. But this other question was, with increased cyber crimes and available in information security professionals, why is it that most company positions aren't being filled? The individual indicated that being a new HCISSP associate, how does he break into the job market? And I think those are very related. Maybe you can provide some insight, because I think that there is an interesting problem here is, how do people that are getting certified break into the job market? And what is it that you did that progressed you through the job market?
Gotcha. This is where humility comes in. So I was a Naval Academy graduate, and I went to NCIS out of the Naval Academy to work. So for those of you younger, NCIS is a real organization called the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. And as I am living proof, we weren't that thin, we weren't that cute. We say can't solve crime in 38 minutes when you take the commercials out. So the character that is modeled after me, 2 characters are modeled after me, I'm told by a friend of mine who's an advisor on the show. One of them is some of the smart ass things the girl with tattoos says. And the other one is that agent that keeps getting in trouble by ignoring what the boss says. So I haven't watched the show very much. I saw like one episode. I'm like, that case sounded really damn familiar. And I'm pretty sure that was a discussion you and I had. And he goes, yep. And I'm like, am I getting royalties for that? He goes, no, but I am. So I met a lot of smart people at NCIS and every other organization I worked at. I got the job because somebody else either was on leave or just not there. And I was the person that stepped up. At 21 years old, I helped, while I was waiting to get my clearances, I helped use LexisNexis, an old green screen program, to find, we had a Navy sailor we were suspecting of espionage, or he was drug dealing, but he suddenly had gotten a lot of money. We didn't know where it came from. How did he get started? And his grandmother had passed away and left him $80,000. I was able to find the notice of it. So we were doing that. A different one, we were investigating a guy who thought he was an espionage agent. And I turned to the agent, I said, have you talked to his ex-wife? And he's like, he's got an ex-wife. And I'm like, yeah, she's got a restraining order up in Philadelphia. So the agent drove from DC to Philadelphia, but we have an office up there too, but he wanted to do this. And talked to him. And she's like, oh yeah, he's a spy. Like, yeah. Also that. She took out a box of top secret material with dust on it she'd been keeping for 5 years and dropped it on the agent's foot. She'd just been waiting for us to call her, but had not, self-notified. Doing those things where I brought spreadsheets and analyzed the date, time of car thefts and told them Thursday night after the carrier pulls out, go to parking lot 5. They rolled up an organized crime ring of 30 people. Just good analytics. And it's honestly better, smarter, cuter people could have done it. I don't know where they were, so I just did it. So I'll tell you, first, rock the job they hired you for. And then with the time you squeak out of that by being insanely efficient, do the job they should have hired you for. And you'll find they elevate you to that job and go hire somebody else to do the thing you used to do. I've done that in every single organization in my career. You rock your day job, turn it into a half a day job, and then start doing what the mission actually needs you to do that nobody else is doing. And being too young is an issue. And here's the best way to get around it. I swear Franco would have said this, even if you weren't on the call. Use your network. Use this group. 2 ways. Find a very senior mentor to talk to you about overall career progression. Then find a mentor 1 or 2 leaps ahead of you and have that person talk to you about their last 2 job transitions, because it'll be more recent and more predictable. The other thing for starting out, find an organization that lets you start out. Go to municipal water supply and be the first person to do cybersecurity for them. Take a government job and get training on the job and do some civil service while you get the job skills. Maybe you'll find you stay for a career. Maybe you'll find it's a great stepping stone. Maybe you'll enjoy it and be ready to go to the commercial sector for a while. Or find an opening position because you have friends at Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, or any of the amazing, amazing companies in Seattle or the environs. And also go to a mission you like. If you love space travel, go talk to one of the 5 major amazing companies within a stone's throw here that do that, and tell them, look, I'll sweep floors if you let me start coming into the SOC and standing a midnight watch. Talk to that CISO. They're probably a CISSP. Frank probably owes them money, or vice versa. Jake probably has them on retainer, or they have Jake on retainer. So that's the way where I would look at, no matter where you are in your career, how to pick your mentors, how to pick the levels of people that can help you with your aspirations and your to-do list. And my career progression, the quick version, military officer at NCIS, founded the Navy's cyber counterintelligence program by my lonesome, me and one other federal agent, but he was a fraud guy and just liked cyber because it sounded fun. Dave Tim, great. He just gave me the room to run. Did that in 3 years, then went over to US European Command and founded what is now called an IO cell, an information operations cell. And for all the COCOMs, they used mine example and replicated it. And then I went and helped arrest war criminals in Sarajevo for a couple of years, wearing civilian clothes and working with Navy SEALs a lot. That was fun. So we delivered people to the tribunal in The Hague. I set up things, by the way, there's a great example of my CISSP. They said, hypothetically, if we're going to do this, what would the network look like? So I designed a network, and they said, hypothetically, if 5 nations were involved with law enforcement, what would the network look like? I'm like, friendly nations or not friendly? Guy goes, meh. So I had to design different physical space, 5 different networks, a US only network. Each country got its networks. Then we had a shared network with the friendlies. Then we had a shared network with all the friendlies and unfriendlies, and all that wiring color coded and everything. By the way, they used to have 3.5-inch disk drives, and Aldrich Ames, a case I've worked at the CIA, we had the Aldrich Ames disk drive lock, so you couldn't put a disk into the disk drive. There were physical locks, and I had the master keys. Then they told me they needed me to design the buildings they would build, gates, guards, use of deadly force regulations, I wrote it all. So like literally they took me to a field and pointed and said, what do we need? And I drew shit on paper and they built it. It was an incredible operation. It was a highlight of my life. I went from doing that back to NCIS as a government civilian, took back over my own program. I loved it that much, dropped my uniform and stayed there. Then went over to EDS and founded their global computer program, forensics program in 99, 2000 range. 9/11 hit, and I was a board certified anti-terrorism officer at NCIS in what's now known as the MTAC. So I was a terrorism watch officer during that whole time I was founding the cyber program. Lost too many friends in New York and DC and went back for 10 years in the government doing terrorism. So I gave up my cyber career, an office of 150 people, the fast track at EDS, the executive washroom, the whole 9 yards, and went back and just was a senior analyst putting warheads on foreheads of terrorists at the Defense Intelligence Agency. Did that for about 10 years, was their chief knowledge architect, even as a contractor for them and CIA. And then the government recruited me to take over the US watch listings identity layer after the underwear bomber. And I designed a case management system nobody wanted that was used for the Boston bombing and for Benghazi, and received a Lifetime Achievement Award that usually is given posthumously for doing that. My boss literally came in, he said, you know that case management thing you've been designing? And I'm like, yeah, the one you've been resisting? He goes, yeah, that you've been secretly implementing anyway? I'm like, yeah. He goes, is it ready to go? And brief the president? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, okay. Now, I didn't brief the president, didn't feel like it. Honestly, don't want to brief presidents or Congress. Somebody else got to do that, the director. He's now over at Uber. But that had nothing to do with the cyber. And it was case management, project management. And then I kid you not, and Frank, you know the story, what I thought was an identity theft phone call really was an executive recruiter for Microsoft. I yelled at poor Al Lorberg for like 10 minutes thinking he was a Ukrainian criminal trying to get my social security number. I thought it was like just awful. They sent me plane tickets to Seattle. I'm like, this is a really in-depth scam. I'm going to take a ride and see how this works. I kid you not. I called friends when I landed and said, this is my last known location. Like, tell the police this is where I was if you don't hear from me in 3 hours. And then I drove to what I believe then to be the Microsoft campus for a job interview, which turned out to be real. And then I've done a startup and some other stuff since then. But looking back, looks like a great career. Looking forward, could not have told you where the next lily pad was. Don't stress about having a plan. Stress about being you and surfing the career and enjoying it as best you can.